welcome to the podcast. I am so excited for this conversation with Brian Nicol from Donovan Group. He's a partner over there, and he has actually over 30 years of experience working with schools, with communication, in education, all of the things. And we're going to have a really unique conversation today. First, just talking about the evolution of communication and the evolution of social media and what schools need to keep in mind. We're going to really be talking about, is social media worth it? And I of course think it is, but we're going to have some good conversation between Brian and I on just why that is. And then we are going to share a little bit about the Donovan Group Communication Academy. This is a new program. It's actually offered in 6 states. We're going to share that, and they're launching a nationwide program. But if you are looking to take your skills or maybe your superintendent skills to the next level when it comes to communication, you're going to want to learn all about this. And there's some great advice along the way. So I'm very excited for you to learn from Brian today. I just want to give a quick plug. It's September 2nd. If you're listening to this live, and you guys, I recently announced a social media for schools retreat. It's actually happening in Stillwater, Minnesota in June of 2025. And there's a wait list right now that you can join. And if you get on that, you're going to be able to sign up on September 12th. Okay, September 12th is when official registration opens. The reason why that date is important is this is a small little retreat. We're actually only opening it up to 100 people nationwide to really spend 3 days, 4 days if you technically, June 23rd through the 25th, focusing on social media and planning and some skill sets that are really going to help you set yourself apart in the 25-26 school year. So very excited. People have been asking me to do an in-person event for quite a while, and we're finally doing it. Very affordable, only $300 per person. So jump on over. We've got a link in the show notes. You can also find it at socialschoolforedu.com under services. There's a retreat 2025 tab. So you can go to that and you can learn a little bit more about that. But I just want to make sure that's on your radar, because I think we will be sold out. We could be sold out as early as September 16th, and I don't want you to lose out. And so get on that waiting list and check out all the information over there. Now, before we jump into our great conversation with Brian, let's get to this week's K-12 PR tip. All right, today's K-12 PR tip is a little Canva tip, okay? We recently had a 4-day Canva camp inside of our membership group. You would have instant access if you joined the membership group. But anyways, this tip came from member Deidre LaPrey out of Texas. And it is a little app within Canva that is called Speed Painter. And basically what Speed Painter does is, like, let's just say your logo. You can have it take your logo, and it will, from the beginning, it'll speed paint it like it's sketching it out with color and everything. You can have a hand present or not. But I just thought it was really cool. It could be a unique way to include your logo on maybe a reel, or, some kind of a video, or even in a story where it adds some movement to whatever information or graphic you might be sharing. So it's called Speed Painter. Try it out. Let me know if you use it. I think obviously it works best with some kind of caricature or, branded image, not necessarily a picture, right? So check that out. And let's get to today's interview with Brian Nicol. Good morning, Brian. Welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, Andrea. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you again.
Is this your first time on the podcast, or did I have you on this when you were at Howard Swamico?
On the podcast, first time, but I think we've done, 2 or 3 webinars back in the day. I mean, it's not our first trip around the sun here together. So
yes, a fellow Wisconsinite. I found Brian
right
early in my journey into this world of school communications, and Brian's been around the block a few times, and just in education almost your whole career. So why don't you share your background and share a little bit about your role now with the Donovan Group?
Yeah, I'll start with the latter part first, and then we'll go back to the beginning. So I'm a partner in the Donovan Group in my second year with the firm. I'm really grateful to be working alongside public school leaders, and as you mentioned, I've been either in or adjacent to public education my whole career. Started back in the early '90s in college athletics at my alma mater, UW Green Bay, working in media relations as the sports information director. Loved that experience, incredible. I want to touch on some of just the change in technology that I saw at the outset of my career, and then it carried forward into teaching and administration. But when we were able to start a family in the early 2000s, I went back to school and got my teaching license, which was amazing and obviously just transformative for me personally and for my career. Taught sixth grade for 8 years, loved it. During that time, I got my principal's license and figured leadership at some point down the road would be in my future. But I was really happy where I was and making a difference, excuse me, with a great teaching team. And then my superintendent tapped me on the shoulder one day in 2014 and said, "We're going to start a communications office. I know your prior background. I know who you are as a teacher and that you are looking for a leadership opportunity. You're going to come over here and do this," which was amazing. It's so cool to be seen in that way and to have someone believe in you and school PR was existed 10 years ago, but it wasn't nearly to the extent that it is now. We know in Wisconsin, when my position was created, there were about 13% of the districts who had dedicated comms, and now that's up over 25%. It's almost doubled. So really worked in that on his cabinet for 9 years as an administrator. Met an amazing group of people, yourself included. Trying to help support school leaders and principals and teachers, and just sharing good news and being intentional with engagement with community and audiences. And in that process, we were actually a client of Donovan Group for crisis communications and referendum communications and some planning and other one-off projects. And over time, the opportunity to come over and join Joe and his team became available to me, and it's been just amazing. Love it, and the ability to take all that I learned in 17 years working in K-12 education and now be able to apply it and help other leaders solve problems is just great. It gets me up early and keeps me up late.
I think I forgot that you didn't. I've just always thought you were that, sixth grade teacher. I didn't realize. So your first college degree was in media relations or what?
No, we won't go into too much detail. My first college degree was in human biology. I was a bio major and a chem minor. Never
Dude,
used it
I
a
was
day.
I was a chemistry major. You know that, right?
Yeah, yeah, I know we had that in common. So it was one of those things where that was my favorite subject in high school. Didn't really know what I was going to do when I went to college, and loved those classes. Loved the complexity and the specificity of the science curriculum. But my entire time in undergrad, I worked in the athletics department as an intern and eventually as a full-time employee while I was still in college. And it was just too great an opportunity to pass up to keep working in Division I college sports. It was awesome.
Okay. But then so you got all of that media experience and all of that, and then decided to go back and do teaching. I mean, most of the guests, Brian, usually come from they were educators or they
Yep,
were journalists, and
yep.
and you've got like the best of both worlds, and have been able to really do a great job. Just um wanted to note you really expanded. You started with one person and you were able to
Mhm.
expand your communications team while you were there at Howard Swamco. You did
Yep.
a lot of speaking, even though you are I think you're self-identified introvert more.
Yeah, that's a fair way to say it. Yeah, my being around people takes a lot of energy and focus, and I work hard at being good at that. But I am at my best when I can recharge, think deeply. Alone time is good for me. So yeah, there are a lot of us. Uh, some more overt in our introvertedness, if you will, in school PR. But yeah, we're a worthy bunch, I think.
You are. And I think what's cool is just that you can tell when I've been in several of your presentations and you've been part of, doing some teaching with my group, and you all that introspective time that you get, you really do a great job speaking. And so
Thank you.
I'm very appreciative that you're willing to share. But you've been in school comms for quite a while, over a decade. How have you seen the role of social media evolve kind of in your time?
Yeah, it's that it exists and continues to exist as part of that evolution. And I'll go back. I mean, you mentioned college athletics. My first month on the job in college athletics, we were printing, folding, stuffing, and mailing press releases to local media in Green Bay. We had a deep conversation about whether email would ever overtake the fax machine as a primary mode of communication. That's how old I am. But I kind of wear that with a badge of pride. And in my time in college athletics, I remember launching our first website. I remember learning how to code HTML in Hot Dog Pro. I've since lost any semblance of skills I have in that area. And in the later stages of my college athletics career, getting into things like audio streaming, not quite video streaming yet for colleges. It wasn't cost effective yet. And then the social media boom of the early 2000s just took off. The job of a sports information director, which was my title, is unrecognizable now from what I was doing back in the early 90s and early 2000s. So all that to say, I feel like that same breakneck speed of technology transition, whether it's hardware or software, is happening in schools. I began teaching in 2007. My first year teaching, I used an overhead projector, and I'm a lefty, so I had the stains on my hand, right, to prove it. I earned all that vis-a-vis marker on my left hand teaching. The next year, I had a smartboard in my classroom. The year after that, I had a laptop cart on wheels. The year after that, those laptops were iPads. The year after that, the kids were taking home the iPads every day. In 5 years, just the hardware we were using shifted tremendously, and that coincided with, the rise of social media. And the way I think about how social media has evolved is it's complex, right? It's the marketplace where the conversation is happening. So schools need to be there and be engaged. And yet, if you were to talk to a high school associate principal or a school counselor about the impact of social media in the last 10 years, it's not going to be a positive conversation. It's been incredibly disruptive to learning processes. We've even seen schools in the last year recently engage in conversations about restricting device access during the school day. That pendulum is swinging in a different direction, all for good and thoughtful reasons, at the leadership level, these conversations they're having. So when I think of social media and the evolution, I think of understanding how audiences use the social media. I think of, the great book by Kristen Majette, The Social Media Imperative, right? That talks about social media in a risk management lens, right? In a superintendent lens of, you can't afford not to be there. And yet to be in that space takes some intentionality, takes alignment with your strategic planning. It's not the mistake you can make. I made in my first 3 years in school PR, which is to just wing it, right? Crowdsource content, throw it out there, see what sticks. Hopefully it makes people happy. The schools that are the most successful in social media have a plan, have some intent, and understand they're building castles on rented land here, right? The Facebook algorithm changes, and we're a slave to that. I'll use my favorite platform, Twitter, which is a shadow of what it once was, in my view. It's certainly a different experience as a Twitter user than it was 10 years ago. But the knowing your audiences in those spaces, knowing how you can and should engage, and knowing that it's quite a beast to feed, as you and your team know, right? Like once you engage in that social media conversation and seek to put good news out into the world and engage your audiences in that space, it can be a lot. Mm-hmm. It can be a lot. So intent is important. Understanding that social media comes with risk and reward for school districts, and I think superintendents know that keenly. I'm sure the superintendents that you talk with have had those kind of conversations, as well as what we do. And mostly there's opportunity to learn and grow. I look at, I'm a late comer to Instagram. And it was Kimberly, who you mentioned earlier, right? When she joined me in Howard Swamico, she's like, this is where we need to be. Like, this is where, it's a 3-generation platform right now. You've got grandparents, you've got parents, and you've got kids who are engaged in this space. We've got to be there. And so, learning and adapting to where the audiences are, and yet still maintaining, Facebook's still king. It's still the largest audiences our districts see anyway. So what can we do to put positive content out in that space? Knowing all along Facebook's also going to be the cause of some stress and some headaches for school districts, and how can we help, support them strategically in how social media has a place in crisis communications and other updates. So It's fascinating and it keeps us busy, as I imagine you can attest to as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think all schools by the year 2024 have, they understand the impact. Some obviously do it better than others, but I'm going to challenge you something not on the list, Brian, but I just want to hear your
Yeah,
thoughts on this. So
hit me.
I recently got an email from a marketing coordinator at a large public school in Colorado,
Mhm,
and basically said, I'm so fed up with social media. Like, I'm
mhm.
ready to drop it, because basically she was looking at it from the lens of, is it putting butts in seats? So, there's an ROI, and is it putting butts in seats, and is it even worth it anymore? And so I got some crowdsourced information from some of the groups that we're in, just to be able to get some thoughts. But I think it's a narrow, not that social media can't help put butts in seats or keep butts in seats, right? Attracting and
Mhm.
retaining students. But
Yeah.
I think there's a bigger picture with some of that. What would be your thoughts if somebody came to you and said, "Oh, is it even worth it anymore?"
Right. Well, I would argue that almost anything we do from a leadership perspective is multivariate and has short-term, mid-term, long-term impacts, and has tangible impacts and intangible impacts. So, to the extent that does a conversation with a community member who doesn't have a current direct connection to our school district, bring in students via open enrollment? No. But does that person through their engagement with the district, through their civic engagement in voting, do they have an impact on your district and the students? Yes. I would argue, and this sounds glib, but anytime two people are together talking to your school district, you want to be able to have some good news to inject into that conversation. You can't be there for every conversation. You're not. People are talking about your local school district in their conversations, whether it's on social media or in person or otherwise. If we have channels where we know people are gathering and participating in that conversation, again, I'll paraphrase, Kristen Majette. It's imperative that we're there. It's not easy. It is labor intensive. It can sometimes feel like, again, trees falling in the forest, because you're putting a lot of time and energy into things, and it's not always easy to measure the impact. Sure, I can say that we grew our district Twitter account from 300 followers to 3,000 because we kept emphasizing snow days on Twitter before anything else. We had some tactical things. We were in a growth phase for a bit, and then we developed more quality content and more aligned content to our strategic initiatives. But I do think that as long as social media, and we're still there in my view, as long as social media is part of the daily interactions of people, they're going to talk about things that are important to them. I believe public schools are important to our communities. So we need to be there. We need to be part of that conversation. There's risk, there's opportunity cost. Time I spent hustling and growing our social media accounts in my first few years as a communications director was time away from internal communications, quite frankly. And it came at the expense of other things that we needed to be doing. But we felt in the long run that social media can have an internal communications component and positively impact our staff perception and staff engagement about putting good news in that space. And just yesterday, my former team in my former district, I say this all the time, that place got a lot more fun once I left. But they put out a great Instagram reel using a clip from Hamilton introducing all the principals who are excited to start the school year. It was 10 seconds of joy. And I just imagine that anyone who has a connection to our district would see that and go, man, this is great. Like, school's coming back. We've got great leaders. We're so proud of them, and they're having fun, because we know once our kids are there, they're going to have fun learning and be engaged and have people that care about them. So, is there a risk? Is there a downside? Absolutely. With almost anything we do, it's an investment of time and energy, and worry or wondering about the impact and the ROI. But with social media, I think we've been able to demonstrate over a decade that there's value. It's complex in a shifting landscape, but schools need to be there. And as I think about, the kind of questions and the kind of support that districts come to Donovan Group for, it's to celebrate. It's to share positivity. It's to be able to help busy leaders, help superintendents, and in many cases, comms people who are focused on other important things, other important priorities, be in that space and share that news, right? So I'm sure your team hears that as well. Like, how can we be better at this? Because we know we have to do it. We're just not comfortable or not confident in taking that leap. Or as it relates to your Colorado person, we wonder if it's the right thing. We wonder if it's the right time and energy put into that space.
Yeah, those are good thoughts. And then as you're talking, I realize if you're watching this on video, guys, Brian wore his hashtag tie for us. How long have you had that tie? Quite a while, right?
Ever since you gave it to me.
Did
Yeah,
I give it to you?
you did. Yeah, it was
Okay.
probably either for doing a presentation together or coming on a webinar.
Yeah.
Back in the day, my big topic was how to survive in a one-person shop, and then it became how to grow into a two-person shop. Those are things I felt like I learned a lot about and could
Yeah.
share. So it's the rare special occasion that I get to break out the hashtag tie. But for
I think
you,
yeah, I think you should wear it all the time. And I think it's very ironic that it matches your Donovan group shirt there.
yeah, I got up early and branded myself for this
You
conversation. So if there's any video or screen grabs that you want to use to push this forward, this doesn't just happen. This takes time.
I just love it. Okay. So I really everything you shared is so powerful, and I really wanted to have you on today because Donovan Group is starting to do some formal school communication training, and I think the way you started out of the classroom, the way I started, I knew nothing about what I was doing when I started
Right.
doing social media for a school. Um, can you tell me about the unique program that you guys are now offering?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, the Donovan Group Communications Academy is a professional learning opportunity. To your point, the school PR game doesn't have an on ramp, right? You have to like grab the bus that's going 70 miles an hour and get right to work. So as we think and as we've worked with districts for over 20 years, started and founded in Wisconsin, and now we're coast to coast. Part of what we hear when we talk with superintendents about what's on your mind, how can we help, what's challenging you, and that is, how can I understand your world better? How can I have a better baseline understanding of how to think about these problems? There's sort of a truism in leadership that being a great communicator might not get you hired. Being a poor communicator will get you fired. So, superintendents and school leaders are coming to us and saying, all of the tactical and strategic support you're providing is great. What about learning? And we felt we had something to offer. So last year, we launched the Donovan Group Communications Academy. We launched it in 2 states, in Wisconsin and Indiana. In Wisconsin, we also worked alongside the Superintendents Association and the School PR Association. So we had guest speakers, subject matter experts to talk about, the 9 topics of the year-long cohort. And we had just an amazing response. We had superintendents, we had communications people, we had directors of curriculum, we had administrative assistants, right? Every district kind of slices the communication pie differently. And what we found and what we learned is there's an appetite for learning more and going a little bit deeper in fundamentals of communication, and how do communications experts think about problems, so the districts can take that back and apply it. So this year, we're excited to be in 6 states, working on expanding that. We're also working on having a national academy that anyone can join, regardless of whether we've got something lined up with your superintendents association or school PR association in your state. So Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, Arizona, Indiana, Tennessee is the latest. So we're excited to
Tennessee?
be working with, yeah,
Okay.
Tennessee.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we're excited to be in all those states, and the academy experience is one that you can participate and learn synchronously. We've got, in some states, the arrangement is for a few of the sessions to be live. In all states, we have them virtually or recorded, so you can join at a time and date if you're like a lunch and learn person. But we also have access to a module where you can jump on and log in and catch the recordings after the fact. And then this year, based on the experience in Wisconsin and Indiana last year, we're calling it Academy 2.0. It's going to be more of a workshop model. Rather than 9 sessions throughout the year, it's going to be 4 sessions, a little bit longer. And we're going to ask leaders to bring their problems. What are you working on? Is it a communications plan? Is it a referendum campaign? Is it crisis and safety response? Let's help you workshop and think deeply and apply those things we talked about in the first year of the Communications Academy to the work that's meaningful to you. We know that the complexity of the superintendency is such where if you don't set aside some workshop time to work the work or to bring your team and have a collective conversation, it's hard to move things forward. Superintendents are our chief reminding officers. They are in charge of setting the vision and direction of the district. So sometimes, and especially in smaller districts, when you have to focus down and in and move some of the work forward, it's good to have a cohort group of like-minded folks who are attacking the same challenges. And we're just happy to be guides on the side, sharing our expertise and what we think we've learned in 20 years of doing this.
So in Wisconsin, you had 9 sessions.
Yep.
How many of those were in person and then how many were virtual?
Yeah, for Wisconsin, we did the first and last sessions in person, aligned those with some other, existing seminars so that,
Yep.
if people might be coming out for, the fall superintendent or spring superintendent seminar, we'll kind of have that add-on session at the beginning. The rest were virtual. All were available, again, asynchronously offline, but topics were communications 101, sort of how does the principles of public relations apply to school public relations. And we talked about communications planning, talked about media relations and social media, talked about crisis communications, which is something our firm certainly does a lot of work in, talked about video, best practices and basics, marketing and branding, internal communications, and then the final wrap-up session, we used that to kind of gather interest in topics throughout the year. And this past year, that final session, we focused on referendum communications and turbulence, right? Communicating in difficult times, heading towards a national election this year. That was a very important topic as, public education becomes a political football. What does that mean for us and as leaders? And what does that mean? How should that affect our communications efforts?
Because a lot of people get thrown into a comms role that don't have formal education in it. But then even like superintendents who were educators and then went on to get an advanced degree, usually. How much communication training do they usually get in their formal education?
Boy, that's a good question. I'm not a superintendent, haven't been one. I have my principal's license and went through that formal licensure process, but I'd never served as a principal. Aside from a lot of work writing, right, thinking of how to express yourself in the written word, I don't know. There's so much complexity to those jobs, and to focus on communications and maybe from a community relations or a boardsmanship, right, standpoint, like how do you think differently about your communications responsibilities with different audiences? I don't feel like I had a real strong theory basis. And every superintendent I've worked with would tell you the first year of the superintendency is that, right, is that crucible, right, where you're thrown in and you learn and you lean on your network. So I do think, I don't know that the interest in the Donovan Group Communications Academy would exist if there wasn't a need, or if superintendents didn't say, hey, I'm in my 4th year. The game's slowing down for me a little bit. I'm starting to get it. Been through a referendum campaign, had some turbulence. And yet I'd love to feel more confident in applying things, steadily and being able to solve problems based on principles and not maybe, I always say all the time, I'm a brain thinker, not a gut thinker. I like to think things through and decide based on some reflection. So how can we, support that knowledge basis of leaders? That's what those conversations really trend toward that direction is, I didn't think about it that way. We've always just taken this approach. What are the risks and rewards to that? So, truly we share information in these sessions, but the most robust learning comes from the conversation among the participants, the peer-to-peer, the Q&A at the end. And that's why it's great, especially in Wisconsin, to have the WISPRA practitioners in, some of the best of the bunch. And there's a lot of good ones out there in our home state coming in and sharing their perspective on these topics. It's great. It's fun to be a part of. My teacher heart just swells when we get to do these things. And I'm excited to see where it's gonna go. We're just starting year 2.
How long are the virtual sessions and how long were your in-person sessions approximately?
Yeah, in-person ones last a little bit longer. And again, every state is asking for something a little bit different. Like they're trying to align to current seminars or whatever. But last year, virtual sessions were about 75 to 90 minutes. This year, based on feedback, we're shortening that up a little bit, trying to get them in under an hour.
Okay. And then the in-person, like you said, it might vary, but it might be, what was the closing one? It was for maybe 3 hours or?
Yeah. We combined the last topic and then just did some kind of year in review, and had a bit of a mini workshop with the participants there. So I think the Whisper one was 2 to 3 hours at the end.
Okay.
They all look a little bit different,
Yeah.
but we want to be able to provide meaningful support and quite frankly, once we make some connections here, both with other people in your state and also with us and the five of us partners who are presenting the content. We're here to help. We'll stick around and we'll take the conversation offline if we need to.
Well, and it's such a ever changing target of communication. I mean, it's changing all the time. And like you said, we really got to look at how our audiences are using it. And then how being in leadership, being in school communication, being a superintendent or a principal, I mean, it's not an easy job. It's challenging, but you're giving them the tools to be able to operate at a little bit higher level and feel a little bit more confident. Who should consider enrolling in this?
Primarily we're working with superintendent associations, right?
Okay.
And as superintendents are solving those communication challenges in their districts, they know best who they're relying on, in their organization. So like I said, we've got superintendents, their administrative assistants. If your district has a communications person, especially if it's someone who, I've used sort of that 2 to 3 year experience range, at least for me. My first year was a fire hose. My first year doing anything, is a challenge as you're just kind of learning the ropes. But by year 2 and year 3, I felt like I was smart enough to ask a good question and to understand what I didn't know. Because in my first year, I didn't know anything. So for me, in Wisconsin and Indiana last year, we had a lot of, mid-career or early career comms people. We've got, leaders of other departments. I think, you know as well as I do that in leadership, communication is critical. And there's elements of, while some of these might be aimed at the superintendency or to a comms person in their day-to-day, there's elements of communications basics and communications principles that apply to anything we do. So we will gladly welcome anyone who wants to learn about and talk about and think about school PR into the conversation. There's not a restriction on title or I believe that leadership isn't about title, it's about influence. So if you're working on these kind of things in your district, we're having a great conversation. Come on in and check it out.
Okay, and tell me the states real slow again. You're in Wisconsin,
Minnesota, Michigan, Indiana, Arizona, and Tennessee. Tennessee might be breaking news. I don't know if we've announced that one yet, but I can, break a little news on the podcast here.
Yes.
And then we're also, based on interest, we're also working on creating access for anyone nationwide who would want to, again, join in the conversation.
Okay.
Not sure how that's going to look yet or when that's going to launch, but we want to be able to provide this to as many people who are interested.
Okay. So if we're going to have your contact information,
yeah.
So if a listener is like, I'd be really interested in that, they could just email you to maybe get on a list or something.
Yep. And it's all on our website on the professional learning tab is a way to learn more. My suspicion is if you live in one of those 6 states, they're marketing that opportunity and you're going to hear from those associations about how to engage, but absolutely reach out to me or check out our website to learn more. And I'm excited about the Academy 2.0. One of the things that identified for me that we were making an impact and that this is something that is going to be useful to folks. It was at the very last session in Wisconsin last year, and an experienced superintendent, right? I think, 5 or 6 years in the role, had joined the academy and wanted to, keep skills brushed up. And at the end of that last session, he said, "Could we do this again next year?" Like, sure, yeah, we're going to offer it again. Spread the word, tell your friends if you had a good experience. He goes, "No, I would just want to go through this exact same process again next year, same content, same topics." And we're like, "Oh, okay, like there's more depth here." And it was out of that conversation that we conceived of Academy 2.0. What would it look like for someone who engaged and inspired and wants to go deeper? How can we take a workshop model and apply it a little bit differently? So it was great to hear someone who after 16 hours of conversation and collaboration and discussion, they said, "Let's do it all over again." Mm-hmm. Okay, we got something good here. Yeah, we're helping.
Yeah, that's incredible. I do my little social media boot camp every year inside my membership group. And the thing is, Brian, is like every year there's some new focus point or an issue that they can go through. And so you're always looking at some of that with a new lens. And so to be
Yeah.
able to talk about one of those topics once a year, I could definitely see a lot of value. So you shared a little bit about the impact. What other feedback have you gotten on the program and the impact you feel that it's making in schools?
Yeah. Feedback on the program has just been thanks for the conversation. Thanks for
Mm-hmm.
connecting us to other people who are tackling these problems. Leadership is lonely. The superintendency is a lonely endeavor. It's as I've said, before today, it's complex, multifaceted. So for superintendents to have access to someone to lean on, whether it's us or each other people who are engaged and involved, I think that's been the greatest takeaway to know that, yep, okay, I'm not the only one uh, challenged by some of these concepts or thinking, how can I, improve? How can I go from good to great? And some of the things that we're already doing. And then, the other is just the opportunity to go deeper. As I said, how can we then, instead of taking this back to my district and applying it to, a state of the district approach or thinking of a more structured community conversation about the work we do in schools on a year-to-year basis. Could I bring that work into this conversation? Could I bring it here? Could we workshop it? So that's again how Academy 2.0 came around. I'm excited to see what comes of that, and if we almost have to build in like a show and share. Like here's the project you worked on all year. Here's the impact of it. And I firmly believe if you think you're doing something well in schools, you got to share it. So hopefully some of the things that are born out of the academy are things that other district leaders can be inspired to preach, to share, get on the mountaintop and talk about what you learned, mistakes you made along the way, and how you're impacting your organization in a positive sense.
Well, and you at Donovan Group have such a depth of experience that no matter what a participant in this academy comes in with, you probably have 2 or 3 people on your staff that are like, yep, I dealt with that. And this is what, and be able to provide some of that insight. And so, like you said, it is lonely. However, you guys have that expertise. So just to be surrounded with that kind of support, I'm sure is life-changing, right?
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, I say all the time, the best part about working with me is that you don't have to work with me. There are people behind me, expert graphic designers, copywriters, just among our partners. We have a former superintendent, former comms person, myself, a former policy director for a governor, a former Emmy-winning news anchor. Like we really bring this diverse set of backgrounds and perspectives. And in addition, just content matter experts and the work we do in video and now, podcasting. We're starting to do our first podcasts for clients in this past year. It's really exciting to be able to have a district bring you a problem and say, yeah, I've got really, really good people that we can help with that. So the academy is a way for us to sort of have that expertise forward and share what we've learned in our learning in working with public schools and just advancing opportunities for all kids. It's I'm gonna misattribute the quote, but public schools are the great equalizer. I'm such a big believer in what they do for students' opportunities and families and just changing the trajectory of lives, that if leaders are growing in their capacity through any means, kids benefit. We know that to be true.
Yeah. And I mean, there's, I think, a lot of leaders. I mean, we believe in coaches, the best athletes in the world, the best golfers, they still have coaches. And so, for this to be able to have, I mean, it just reaches, I think, every part of your job. Usually if there's an issue, it goes back to communication, right? Like there's something that maybe could have been done a little bit better when it comes to communication. And so this could be a great opportunity. So definitely if you're in one of those states, hound Brian to keep you posted with the nationwide opportunity too. And I'm just excited because I know personally, one of our school communications gals we do their social media for them was part of it, Kathy, and she really got so much out of it. I talked to a couple superintendents at the last WISPRA meeting that was kind of with the superintendents. And so I got to talk to them and they really enjoyed the program. So definitely check it out. So in closing, Brian,
Mhm.
I want to ask, what would you say is your best social media tip?
Yeah. You have to share good news. You have to share a window to the wow. My wife is a lifelong kindergarten teacher. She sees things every day that would bring you tears of joy. Um, and in some regards, she's numb to that. Not that she isn't great at her job, not that she doesn't care about kids, but it's her day-to-day experiences of growth and of joy and of productive struggle and love and care. I think if we could bottle that and sprinkle it on everyone in our community, public schools would be at a very different place in the community consciousness and conversation. So it takes intent. You need to be in those spaces sharing good news. I would argue that my opinion of Facebook and its value changed during the pandemic, right? Maybe irreparably. Um, so all the more reason that districts who are on Facebook and engaging their communities there need to have good news. Use the algorithm and the tools that Facebook allow you to connect and share good things. Empower the people that are online to share their pride in what you're doing. You have to be in those conversations, sharing good news. It's unlikely other people will do that for you. So give them the opportunity to do that more easily. And I think kids benefit when we share our community pride in their success.
Window to the wow. Is that a Brian Nicol quote, man?
I don't know. I admire and acquire a lot of things. There's not a lot of original up here, but sure,
I've
you can
never
attribute
heard
it to
it.
me.
I don't think I've really ever heard it. So I really love that. And it's so, so true. You know, our staff gets, I mean, they have a hard job and they're focused on a lot of things, but the amazing things they get to see every day, the normal person, 70% of your voting group has no connection to the school. We got to snap and share those pictures
Yeah.
you know, get those stories out there. Um,
Yep.
so what's the best way to stay connected to you, Brian?
Yeah, you bet. My email is Brian, Brian dot Nicol, Nicol at Donovan-group.com, Donovan hyphen group.com. I am also on Twitter. I will probably be the last one on
I
Twitter.
am too.
If it
I'm there.
Okay. All right, good. Yeah. If it does crash and burn, I will still be there. It was, for better or worse, transformative for me as a teacher. I was getting daily lesson plan ideas from Twitter in its heyday. Obviously, you know, K-12 PR chat and the school PR network is amazing on Twitter. I still think it has some value in media relations, but I also recognize it's a very different place than it used to be. So you can absolutely reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at BS Nicol 2, the number 2, BSNICOL 2.
Okay. We'll get both of those in the show notes. I really appreciate getting a chance to talk and learn more about this awesome program. And so we'll get that news out there. Is there anything that you want to end with today that we maybe didn't cover?
Just deep appreciation for our team and your team and all of the folks out there who are seeking to help public schools be successful. We know firsthand how amazing the opportunities for our kids are in our community schools. And I just it's been the honor of my life to spend, gosh, going on 30 years working in or alongside public education. So thank you for all you do. Know that there's a lot of folks out there who care as deeply as you about what we're doing, and we're here to help. So keep it up. Thanks so much.
Yes, it's the beginning of a new school year. Lots ahead of us. We know the school years go fast as well, and we're thankful that you hung out with Brian and I today. We'll be back with another great episode next week, and until then, keep celebrating those stories, guys. Bye bye.